everyone, it's Jennifer from Flux. In this video, I'm going to show you how to crochet a classic granny hexagon stocking. This is a fun project and it's very pretty, and we are going to be making each motif together and learn how to make the motifs. We're going to learn how to seam them all together. I have a helpful chart. And then finally, we are going to learn how to add a nice little edging at the top with a hanging loop. And if you like, we can put some fun pom-poms on the heel and the toe of the stocking. Now, as you can see, this stocking is pretty big. We're going to be using some worsted weight yarn and a J-hook. If you want a little bit smaller of a stocking, you could go with a thinner yarn and or smaller hook. The finished measurements of the stocking I have here are about 8 inches across the top, from the toe all the way, not including the pom-pom, all the way up to the top loop here is about 31 inches. From the heel to the top is about 20 inches. And then along the bottom of the boot or the foot part is 15 inches. Okay, so like I said, this is an oversized stocking. I prefer larger stockings because you can stuff them full of lots of things. But if you prefer, you can also just hang this on the wall and it makes a really pretty handmade decor item for the holidays as well. So let's get started. For this project, you'll need a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle, a tape measure is super helpful to get the measurements that you need. We're going to be using a 6mm J crochet hook. This is my Frills Odyssey. I'll put the link down below in case you want to get one of your own. And for the yarn, this is a wonderful project to use up some scraps that you may have on hand. You could do really any color scheme you like. You could do a rainbow of colors. You could stick with just 1 or 2 colors. I did sort of a spearmint color scheme and a peppermint color scheme for mine. So this is worsted weight acrylic yarn. This is the Red Heart Super Saver. I have lots of odds and ends of all different colors of this yarn, so I thought it would be a good opportunity to use some of this up. So for the peppermint, I did a red, a pink, and a white, and this is the cherry red, the perfect pink, and the white. For the spearmint color scheme that I did, this is patty green, spring green, and white. However, you can use any colors that you like, and it's also really fun to see what everybody chooses as well. So this is a wonderful way to use up some yarn that you may have on hand as well. One other little thing I forgot to mention is you might also want to grab a stitch marker, or you could just use a scrap piece of yarn. Whenever I'm working with motifs and placing them like we'll be doing later, I like to have a stitch marker so I can mark the top of my piece and kind of, no matter how I'm seaming it, I always know where the top is and how we need to orient everything. So a stitch marker would be helpful, or you can just use like a scrap piece of yarn and just tie a little bow at the top as well. We're going to begin our stockings by making all of the granny hexagons first. Now you'll need a total of 17 of these, and these can be any colors you like. Again, this is a great stash buster. Our hexagons, each one is going to be 4 rounds. So for this peppermint color scheme that I did round 1 in white, round 2 in the pink, round 3 in the red, and round 4 in the white. Now obviously you can change it up however you like, but I just wanted to show you in case you wanted to replicate what I was doing. So let's scoot this out of the way. We'll keep this handy so we can refer back to it. And we're going to just grab a little bit of yarn here. And what we're going to do is begin with the white with round 1. So what we need to do first is put a slip knot on our hook. Wrap the yarn around your fingers to make a loop, bring the yarn behind the loop, reach in with your hook, bring up the loop, and tighten. The next thing we're going to do is do our starting chain and then create a ring. So to make a chain, wrap the yarn around the hook and bring it through the loop. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 chains, and then we're going to join to create a ring, and we'll be working our stitches into the center of the ring. So go to that first chain that you made, the farthest chain from your hook, insert the hook into that chain, bring up a loop. Now bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook, and we now have our ring. You might want to kind of open it up a little bit because we're going to be working lots of stitches into the center of that ring. Also, this tail, we're going to hold along the edge as we work our stitches, and that will weave it in as we go along, and it'll also help to cinch up the center. The next thing we want to do is chain 4 to begin. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this chain 4 is going to count as our first double crochet chain 1, okay? So what we need to do, if we look back at our hexagon, is create 12 wheel spokes. It almost looks like a sun or a wheel or something like that. So we already made the first one, so we're going to make 11 more. So you want to work 11 double crochet, chain 1 into the center of the ring, okay? So to make a double crochet, wrap the yarn around the hook, insert the hook into the center of the ring, bring up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook. And I'm just going to come in a little bit more. Wrap the yarn around the hook, bring it through the first 2 loops, wrap the yarn around the hook, bring it through the last 2 loops. That's our double crochet, and then chain 1. Okay, so that was 1. We're doing a total of 11. Okay, so 1 double crochet, and then 2 double crochet, chain 1. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sliding things over if you need to, 7, 8, 9, sliding things over, 10, and 11. So double crochet, chain 1, okay? So then what we're going to do, remember that chain 4 that we just did? We're going to count 3 chains up, 1, 2, 3, and join with a slip stitch to close the round. So insert the hook into that 3rd chain up, bring up a loop, bring that loop through the loop already on your hook. So round 1 is complete. So then what we're going to do is grab our scissors, cut the yarn, and we're going to fasten off. So wrap the yarn around the hook and just pull it through that loop. Okay, so we can kind of scoot the white yarn out of the way for now, and we're going to grab our next color. All right, so the next color in our lineup here is the pink. So what we want to do is tie on a new color. Now you can really tie this into any of these chain 1 spaces. Remember, in between each double crochet was a chain 1, so you can tie that on anywhere. I like to go opposite the knot. It's just a personal preference, so I don't have too much bulk because I like to weave the ends in as I go along, and if I have too many ends it looks a little bulky. So I like to just go across, but you can tie it in anywhere you like. So insert your hook into any of those chain 1 spaces, grab your new yarn color, hook it onto your hook, and pull it through, and then what you're going to do is just tie it right on. Okay, so just tie it right on there. Now if you wanted to keep the same color, what you can do is just wherever you left off, just slip stitch over to the first chain 1 space that you come to. All right, once again, we're going to hold this tail along the edges we work. Now, some of you don't like to weave the ends in as you go. You like to kind of tackle it at the end. Whenever you're using and making lots of motifs, you're going to have lots of ends. Because we're doing multicolor motifs, you'll have lots and lots of ends. So I would recommend weaving them in as you go along, but again, it's completely up to you. Then what you're going to do is insert the hook into that same space where you just tied on the yarn, bring up a loop, and then you're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and that's going to count as a double crochet. Then in that same space, you're going to work a double crochet, chain 1, okay? So that chain 3 that we did plus that double crochet gives the look of 2 double crochets. So we're going to be working like in each space sets of 2 double crochets and then a chain 1 in between, okay? So hop over to the next space. We can still hold that tail along the edges if we want to. And then in the next space, work 2 double crochet, chain 1, okay? So 2 double crochet, 1 and 2, and then a chain 1. Hop over to the next space, that chain 1 space, and work 2 double crochet, chain 1. Hop over to the next space, do the same thing, 2 double crochet, chain 1, 1 and 2, and then chain 1. Okay, So in every chain one space all the way around, we're going to just keep doing the same thing. 2 double crochet, chain 1. Once we get towards the end of this round, we'll rejoin, we'll finish up this round, and we'll begin the next round. Okay, coming up to the end of the round, I'm just working my last 2 double crochet, chain 1 in that last chain 1 space. And then what we're going to do is in the third chain up, 1, 2, 3, we're going to join with a slip stitch to close the round. Insert the hook into that chain, bring up a loop. Now bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook. Then what we're going to do is cut the yarn, wrap the yarn around the hook, and pull it through that loop to close up round 2. For round 3, we're going to grab our red yarn, and then once again in any of these chain 1 spaces, I like to go opposite the knot just to cut down on the bulk. Insert your hook into any of those chain 1 spaces, grab your new yarn, hook it on, pull it through, and then just tie it right on. So round 3 is very similar to round 2. We're just adding 1 more double crochet into each space. Okay, so once again, hold that tail along the edge as you go. And we're going to trim these in a minute just to kind of clean things up a little bit. So what we're going to do now, and our hexagon's getting a little bit bigger, so I'm going to zoom out a little. Insert the hook into that same space where you tied the yarn, and we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And once again, this is going to count as a double crochet. So in that same space, we're going to work 2 double crochet. So 1 double crochet and 2 double crochet, and then we're going to chain 1. Okay, so hop to the next chain 1 space, and in this space we're going to work 3 double crochet, chain 1, because remember this chain 3 counted as one of our double crochets, so we actually have like this little group of 3 here. So in this space we're going to work 3 double crochet, chain 1. So 1, 2, 3, chain 1. Hop over to the next chain 1 space and work 3 double crochet, chain 1. 1, 2, 3, chain 1. Okay, so we're just going to do this all the way around our circle, and once again, once we get to the end, we'll rejoin, and then it's where it gets really exciting, because right now it's going to be a circle, but our next step for our white yarn, our 4th round, we're going to be turning our circle into a hexagon. Okay, so let's work this round and then we'll rejoin and get started on the next round. Just coming up to the end of round 3, working the last 3 double crochets in that last space. So 1, 2, and 3, chain 1. Then what we're going to do is in that 3rd chain up, 1, 2, 3, we're going to join with a slip stitch to close the round. Okay, so now we have this really pretty circle, and we're going to turn it into a hexagon. So go ahead and cut your yarn, wrap the yarn around the hook, bring it through the loop, and then grab the yarn that you'd like to use for round 4. Again, I like to go opposite the knot. And then what we'll do is in any of these chain 1 spaces, we're going to insert our hook, bring the new yarn through, and we're just going to tie it on the top. So as you can see, these hexagons, even though we have to make 17 of them, they're really quick and easy to make. Okay, and now we're ready to begin round 4. So before we get started, I want to look at this with you for a second. As you can see, for our hexagon, we're going to be creating corners. As you can see, it creates a little point here, and we're going to be creating sides, which is the flat part of our hexagon. So we're going to go corner, side, corner, side, corner, side, all the way around, and that is going to give us our hexagon shape. So let me scoot that over, and let's come back to our piece we're working on here. So once again, I'm going to hold this tail along the edge as I work, and we're going to insert our hook back into that same space where we tied the yarn on and bring up a loop, and we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and then work 2 double crochets in that same space. 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet. We're going to begin by creating a corner. So we're going to make a point. So chain 1, And then in that same space, we're going to make 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, and 3. Just like that, okay? So that will give us our first little corner. Now we're going to chain 1, and we're going to hop over to the next space, and we're going to work a side. Now our sides are worked by just working 3 double crochet, chain 1. So in that space, work 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3, chain 1. Okay, so we did a corner, a side, and now we need to do another corner. So in that next space, we're going to work 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and then in the same space, work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, and we just did a corner, so we're ready to do a side again. So in the next space, work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, 3, chain 1. So let's look at what we have so far. We've created a corner, a side, a corner, a side, okay? So we're just going to keep going all the way around doing the same thing. So let's do one more together. The next space, work 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and in the same space, work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. All right, so let's keep working all the way around, doing our corner, side, corner, side, corner, side, all the way around. And then we're going to close up this round and our hexagon will be done. So the next thing I'm going to show you is how to place your motifs and seam them together so we can start to construct our stocking. Coming up to the end of round 4, so work our last 3 double crochets, 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and then we're going to count 3 chains up, 1, 2, 3, and join with a slip stitch to close round 4. All right, grab your scissors, cut the yarn, wrap the yarn around the hook. Now, this is totally a personal preference, but I like to deal with the ends now because we're going to be sewing them all together later. Let me just zoom out here. We're going to be sewing them together later. So you can either wait until you've made all 17 of your motifs, or you can kind of deal with the ends as you go. So a lot of these ends, if we flip this over, we wove them in as we went along. So you can just sort of give them a little snip here and there, and then that center one, pull it nice and tight, give it a snip, give it a tug and a snip. I'm just going to go around and take care of all these ends. And as you can see, when we have these multicolor motifs, we're going to have lots of ends here. So all these ones in the middle I can snip, but this last one here on the end I have to do with a tapestry needle. So grab your tapestry needle and just go ahead and thread it. And then go in. I like to go in one direction. Now, if you notice I'm on the back, you can see the back, this is the back, this is the front. They look a little bit different. So the side that faced you while you made your hexagon, you'll want to flip it over when you do your ends, okay? So go in one direction with your tail and come back in the other direction with your tail just to lock that into place. So again, you can kind of weave these in as you make them, or you can do them all at once. All right, so I have 2 here. We're going to go ahead and make all the other ones. So just if you need to back up the video and rewatch it for as many times as you need, go ahead and make the rest of your motifs. Again, we need 17 of them, okay? So you can just make like a nice big pile of them. So what we want to do now, I've already woven all the ends in like we did a few minutes ago. I'm going to do the two flat sides together. So if we refer back to our chart, see the two flat sides are together, the 2 points are sticking up, and the right sides are facing up, okay? You don't want to have one of the back, one of the front facing. You want to make sure when you make this entire stocking, all the sides are facing the same way, okay? So put your flat sides together, and then you're going to fold it in on itself like a book, okay? So you're going to sort of make a sandwich. And so now we have the two flat sides facing us. Now what I like to do to keep myself everything lined up is, you can see those chain one spaces that we made a little while ago. I like to put my finger through it, and that keeps it lined up as I sew. So we have the corner spaces, we're going to line those up, and we're going to have our neck spaces, and we're going to kind of sandwich everything together. So go ahead and take your needle, and it's really important here that you use matching yarn. That will keep your seams nice and neat, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to tie that right on. So we will have some more ends to deal with later. Okay, so again, I like to put my finger through that chain one space just to keep everything lined up. Sort of like a foolproof way to make sure everything's together. And then what I'm going to do is just go all the way across. This will be our first seam of our stocking. Again, I still have my finger in there, keeping that lined up. Now I've done that part, so I'm going to hop with my finger over to that next chain one space and sort of line things up that way. Okay, and we're just going to kind of go through here. I can move my finger back now. I'm going to put my finger in that corner space. See how it keeps everything? You can see right through those spaces. All right, now I'm just going to come down here. Now you could cut a really long piece of yarn and just not take your tapestry needle off, just keep seaming and adding and things, but it's really however you like to do it, okay? Now, we're at the end. We have our first seam done. I like to just take it through one more time at the end there. Don't pull it all the way through. Actually, we want to get our tail out of the way, but leave a little loop in there, and you can just take your needle right through and pull it, and that'll create a nice little knot. Okay, now we have like our little book here. We're going to open it back up, straighten everything out, and as you can see, holding the finger in there as we seamed, everything looks very symmetrical. Okay, so now we have 1 and 2 seamed. So remember I mentioned the stitch marker before? Let's make a little mark here, because I'm going to put the stitch marker at the top center of my piece. Okay, so I'm going to put a little circle there, just indicating where my stitch marker is going to be. Okay, and you know what, if you've done this before, you can kind of do this even without a chart like this or stitch markers, but I like to just stay really organized, because once or twice I've put in past projects motifs in a weird spot and I've had to pull them out and move them. So I like to keep everything very organized. And again, this is also at the blog. You can get this too as a photo, and so you don't have to pause the video and look at the chart. Okay, so I'm going to go into, this is motif 2 according to my chart. So I'm going to go ahead and just put that stitch marker in right now. So my spot is marked. So as I add more and more and more, I'll always know where that top middle is, because you need to turn it, move it, and flip it, and sandwich things. And so that will always let you know where that spot is at the top of your piece, okay? So what you need to do next is go ahead and sew all of the rest of your motifs together. Now, if you notice number 17 is kind of off by itself, make your 17th one just separate, and we're going to sew that on later, okay? So go ahead and seam everything together, and then we'll rejoin with this piece here of sewn together motifs. So I grabbed my other color combination because I wanted to show it to you of the greens. Now, so far you've only seen the pink and the red one, but here's the other one, how it looks. And here is my chart. Now I show all the motifs, all 17 of them, and this is also at the Flux blog, so you can see it a little bit more closely. But I have them all lined up on how you're supposed to sew them. So you'll want to sew them as I have shown here. And again, it's also in the blog if you needed to print it or have it for reference. The only thing you're not going to seam is this orange mark here where I've said do not seam. But you'll want to seam it everywhere. Now, you can also notice here, there's a little loop at the top. I have that corresponding to the top of my piece. Now, I've already sewn these together except for here, and that matches with this one. But the top middle corresponds with the top middle here. Also, you may notice there's a pink outline of the stocking. Now that is going to be the front of the stocking. So everywhere that's not in this pink area is going to be folded back, and we're going to sew it that way. Okay, and then you also have this extra one. This is going to come around here and be the top of the toe. It's sort of going to like bend around the top, okay? And we're going to go through all that in just a moment. But everywhere you see this pink will be the front of the stocking, and everything around the sides and here will be the back where we're going to fold it, okay? So what I would recommend is grabbing some clips or some stitch markers like I have here just to kind of hold it together while you work. It just keeps things a lot straighter. So we're going to keep our little chart handy here and grab our tapestry needle and our scissors and a whole bunch of stitch markers. And what we're going to do is sort of like pin it together or clip it together so you can let it kind of hold itself together as you sew, and it'll keep it straighter. So I went ahead and sewed it in the next part of the video, but I wanted to kind of slow down and show you how I put it all together here. So the first thing you'll want to do, now you can sew this inside out, but I found if you sew it right side out and use a piece of matching yarn, it will blend and it makes things a lot easier if you keep it right side out. I've tried both. It's a tiny bit easier to keep everything right side out. Now, if we look at our chart and match the top little stitch marker here with our little stitch marker bow here, you'll see that between the 2 and the 3, there is a fold. So you're going to fold that, and you'll notice that this hexagon is getting folded in half, and this one's sort of getting folded on the seam, okay? But if you look at hexagon number 1, which is right here, that one is folded in half. So you're going to take it and fold it back like this, okay? And we're going to worry about this bottom part next. But you can see that this is going to be like the top leg part. So if we flip this over, you'll see almost like a puzzle, these hexagons, and we'll deal with these tails later, these hexagons line up just like that, okay? So what we need to do is grab whatever you want to hold it together with, your stitch markers, or even like clothespins or something, you can do that. And you're just going to start kind of clipping it together where these seams are, okay? And that will hold things together and make it make a lot more sense while you're trying to sew it. Because when you sew things, you're moving them like I'm doing right now. You're kind of moving them all around and flipping it upside down. Like right now it's upside down, and it can get a little bit confusing. And I will say, the first stocking I made the pink and red one first. It was a little bit confusing until I started putting it together. So we're just kind of clipping this all together. Okay, now that that is held together, and we're going to just come down and do this last one here. The leg part is 3 rows tall, and then you can see it starts like folding back different ways as you get farther down. So just this first couple of rows of hexagons here, we're just going to hold those together. All right, now let's turn this around, and then what we're going to do next is construct the boot part, the bottom, like the heel and the toe part. Okay, so just to give you an idea of where we're at on our little map here, we have our stitch marker, which you can see up here, and we folded it. And now when you come to the bottom, so we have 1, 2, 3 rows, 1, 2, 3 rows. And then remember that one spot I said not to seam? That is this hexagon sticking out. So we're already sort of getting, if we slide it up a little bit, we're already sort of getting that boot shape, okay? So now we need to fold some stuff back a little bit more. So here we have this that we can fold up under. And then we're going to keep clipping. So I have these two that I can clip together. Have my stitch markers here. I'm gonna just pin those together. It's sort of like when you're sewing, when you're using fabric, how you pin things together. Just keeps it nice and straight, especially this, because there's some hexagons are folded in half. It can get a little bit confusing, okay? Okay, so from here on out, it's kind of more like a puzzle, and it's starting to kind of come together. Now we can keep connecting our pieces. And I'm really glad too that I had this green one made up when I made this video so that I could show you this color combination too, because I think these are so much fun together. This is the spearmint version, and then the other one was the peppermint. Okay, so I'm going to pin these together. This is, if we're looking at our chart, we're kind of coming down here. So right in that little nook is where we're at right now, okay? So I'm going to pin these together, and then you can flip your stocking over, and you can see how they line up on this side as well. So I hope that if you kind of like put your stocking all together all at once, and now these three I'm going to pin all together. But if you kind of put your stocking together all at once and it made sense right off the bat, good for you. I remember when I first made one of these way back when, it was a little confusing. I didn't quite understand this whole part right here. But I guess when you make them or see one made, it kind of makes more sense. So I'm hoping that this helps if you're having a little bit of trouble putting it together. Okay, so I'm just, now I have one more here I want to pin. I like to pin these really well so that everything stays together. And as you sew this together, you can obviously remove them, okay? So we get these together up here. We have our piece almost together, but I wanted to show you, if you remember, we have that one by himself over here, okay? So we're gonna turn this around, and I'm just gonna throw a few more little stitch markers in here. Now, stitch markers don't need to just be used when you're stitching and you're knitting and crocheting and things like that. They also are great for seaming as well, to hold your pieces together. Okay, so we have, now this bottom part is just folded, so we don't need to do that, and these I've already kind of pieced together. Now if we flip our stocking back together, and I keep trying to flip it this way so it sort of corresponds to our chart. One last piece, if you notice, the toe here is sort of stair-stepped. So what we'll need to do is fit our last little hexagon in here, and then you'll want to, from point to point like this, you'll want to fold it in half, just like this, and just kind of like nestle it down in there. And then what I'm going to do is show you this last part here, because as you can see, there's like a notch there, so it kind of is something I want to also show you. Okay, so I'm just pinning these last few little areas together. So I want it to have a nice, secure. Plus, if you don't get this done in one sitting, this is also extremely handy to have everything put together, okay? So we have our toe. Now if we flip this over, we'll also need to, now I'm going to turn this stocking, this particular stocking, inside out so that I can weave in the ends as well. But we're going to fold our little hexagon down, and see that point is going to go right in there, and this is all going to be stitched together. And as you sew it too, some of these more geometric kind of angular, it'll sort of soften up, okay? And then we have this one where we're going to take this corner and this corner, and then we'll have, you just want to go through here and just take your time. We're going to get this toe done down here, get that hooked together, and then spin this around, because now we have these corners And again, this will all sort of lay down when we sew it, okay? And then I have one more stitch marker, so I'm going to throw it right in here to get this part joined together here, okay? So now we're going to move on to the video where we're going to, and see all this will get sewn down. So this will be more of a, once you sew it down, it'll be more of like a smooth transition. So what we're going to do next in the next part of the video is we're going to sew it. So you want to grab a little bit more of your white yarn or whatever color you used for that fourth and final round of your hexagons. And then we're going to sew it all together, and then we're going to move on to this top little edging that we're going to do, and later on the pom-poms as well, okay? So I hope this showed you sort of how this all fits together and how it all looks, and that way you can sew it. And if you need to do this in multiple sittings, which is when you're a busy person, you need to like do a little bit at a time, this will all stay together and you can come back to it as much as you want to. Now for this part, I will say that it is easier to lay it flat and to have it all kind of clipped together like I did. I'm keeping my chart handy just so I can keep myself straight here. Okay, so everything is all seamed up. We have the bottom done, we have the top done. So we're gonna embellish it a little bit. Now all this stuff is completely optional, but if you wanna hang your stocking, you'll definitely need a little loop at the top. So we're gonna make a nice little single crochet edge around the top and then kind of bring it around to make a little hanging loop, okay? So when you look at the top of your stocking, you'll see that you have like 2 points here and a point here. So take that back point, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna put our hook into that corner space of that hexagon, hook the yarn on, bring it through, and just tie it right on. Just like that, okay? Then we're going to go into, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see here. We're going to go into that same corner space where we just tied the yarn on. We're going to bring up a loop, whoops, bring up a loop and chain one, and then work a single crochet into that same space, okay? Then we're going to go into that first stitch and work a single crochet. If you're not familiar with a single crochet stitch, all you have to do is insert your hook, bring up a loop, wrap the yarn around the hook, bring it through both loops, okay? Go into the next stitch, go into the next stitch, go into the space, that little space right there, and then go into the next stitch. So everywhere there's a stitch, you're going to work a single crochet, and everywhere there's a space, like in between those groupings, you'll work a single crochet as well. And that's just going to add a nice little simple edge, okay? So let's do a few more of these together. Let me turn my stocking so it's facing upright a little bit better, okay? So we're now at a space. So I'll work my single crochet in that space. We're just doing this all the way around the top edge till we get back to that back point of our stocking. Okay. Now sometimes you might have where you had a join, just try to go in between there like that and work a single crochet, okay? The object here is to just keep things nice and neat and give it a nice straight edge, which we are accomplishing. It looks very nice, and it does give it, adding an edge, especially of a contrasting color like this, it does give it a nice kind of more finished look, okay? So just go all the way around. Everywhere you see a stitch, put a single crochet in there, and every time you come across a space, put a single crochet in there, and then every time you have like here where we join the two together, you'll just kind of put one in the middle, okay? So go all the way around with your single crochets, and once we get almost to the end, we'll rejoin and add that loop. Just working those last couple of stitches around the top edge of our stocking. And then what we're going to do is work a last single crochet in that same space where we began. Now let's add a hanging loop. So all you need to do for that is chain 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then go back down, and that first single crochet you worked, go right into that single crochet. Might need to wiggle it a little bit, and work a slip stitch. So bring up a loop, bring that loop through the loop that's already on your hook, And now you have a little hanging loop. Now if you need one that's bigger, try working a chain 10 for a little bit taller, or a chain 12 if you want a really big one, okay? But I think a little one is fine. If you're hanging it on a nail or a small hook, that's plenty. Okay, so I'm going to cut the yarn, wrap the yarn around the hook, bring it through, and then our top edge is finished, and it looks great. So you will have two little ends here. So just go ahead and weave those in, and because they're a contrasting color, we don't want to go down into the white spot. We want to go in the inside edge of our stocking here and just weave that in the red section only, okay? And then just give it a little snip and repeat for the other tail as well. Okay, our little edging looks wonderful. Now let's go down to the bottom of our stocking here. And what we're gonna do is next is, let me zoom back out, we're gonna put a little pom-pom on the heel of our stocking and down at the toe of our stocking. Okay, so it's super easy to make a pom-pom. All you need to do is cut a piece of yarn about 12 inches, and I am going to set that aside. And then what we want to do is take our yarn and we're going to hold it down the front of our hand, and we're going to just start wrapping. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going around all 4 fingers. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 98, 99, and 100. So I did about 100 wraps around all 4 fingers. And I grabbed a bowl here because we're going to give our pom-pom a little haircut in just a minute. So what we want to do is take that piece of yarn that you cut earlier and just kind of lay it down on your surface and slip this carefully off your fingers. And then we're going to lay our little bundle down like this. And then take your 2 pieces of yarn and you're going to tie it very tightly. Now, there's kind of a fine line between this. You want to tie it really tight, but there's always the possibility of your yarn breaking. So you want to just kind of be careful, but get it as tight as you can. So take these 2 strands that you just tied and kind of use them as a handle. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to switch to my big scissors. It's a little bit difficult with the small scissors, but switch to your big scissors. And then what you're going to do is cut all of the loops out of your pom-pom. So make sure you cut until there's no loops left. There might be some kind of buried down in here. And you want to cut every loop that you see. And we're using those long tails as a handle. And we're later going to use those long tails to hang or tie rather, our pom-pom onto our stocking, okay? Now it looks a little wild, and that's okay, but what we're going to do now is you can sort of flatten it down with your hand a little bit. We're just going to give it a nice haircut. We want our pom-pom to look nice and neat and very like nice and dense looking, if you will. So we're going to cut it back pretty far so we can get some really nice denseness to our pom-pom here. Okay, so we're just gonna trim, trim, trim. This part takes a few minutes because you want to trim it back pretty good. And you might need to, every so often, give it a little fluff to kind of like loosen up the strands. Okay, and we're just going all around, trimming our pom-pom. Now most of it, this is a really good activity to do over a trash can. I'm doing mine on my table and it's kind of going everywhere. Some of it's going in the bowl. Okay, so just give it, you know, you might have some wild ends here, but just give it a nice trim. You don't need the pom-pom to be huge, but you do want it to definitely be nice and neat, okay? So just try to get the most round, kind of dense look that you can on your pom-pom. You're going to have some strands that look a little wild, and you'll just want to give them a nice neat trim. So our pom-pom is finished and it looks great. So what we want to do now is I'm going to put this one on the heel, and then we'll put the other one on the toe. So go ahead and grab your tapestry needle and thread one of these ends, and then all you're going to do is just go to the pointiest part of the heel. You're going to take it in. And pom-poms are very forgiving because they kind of floof around what you're tying them onto, which is nice. So we're just tying this nice and tight. I'm going to do a couple of strong knots on here, And this will really make your stocking look festive. Now, you don't have to weave in the ends for a pom-pom because if you just trim these little ends flush, it sort of will like blend in, okay? So I'm going to put that one on there, and then I'm going to head down to the toe of the stocking and add the other pom-pom next. Okay, so our pom-poms have been added, our edging is done, and our stocking looks awesome. Now, like I mentioned before, I did worsted weight yarn with a J-hook, so my stocking is a little bit oversized, which I like because you can stuff lots of things into it. And if you want, you could even hang this on the wall for some decoration as well and not even use it for a stocking. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and that is how you make a classic hexagon stocking. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Fiber Flux video updates. Thanks again!